A very good evening, ladies and gentlemen. As usual, once again, very warm welcome to another edition of our evening talk. You all know there are too many events happening next 4 days. Because MMA's policy speaker, I'm able to get of outstanding caliber and outstanding achiever, so we don't say no. That's the reason next 4 days continuously we have. I think just for recap, I'll quickly tell you before I call upon the speaker and the chairman to come and take on today's talk. Tomorrow, the 6th of November, we have Leadership Conundrum, The Power of Straight Line. He's one of the brilliant speakers, I can assure you. Major General Arun, Yuddha Seva Medal, Sena Medal, and Vishish Seva Medal. He's a Commandant, Deputy Commandant of Chief Inspector of Officer Academy. And he's going to speak on a very interesting leadership conundrum, power of straight line. He says straight line is so simple, shortcut. But many a times as a leader, you may not be able to do a straight line. You do a lot of circumventing to act, and how do you do smartly? And this is what he's going to speak. And to chair the session, we have Shankar, founder of CAMS, is going to be the chairing the session. Then day after tomorrow, 7th, we have How I Almost Blew It. It's again interesting, not to be missed even. Siddharth Rao is the CEO and co-founder of Web Chutney, and he's also authored a book, How I Almost Blew It. He's going to speak on that. We have Murugavel Janakiraman. Again, you all know, he's not new to our members. He's the founder CEO of BharatMatrimony.com. And Anant Rangasamy, editor of Melt Beyond, is going to be the chairing this session. Then on Friday, 8th November, again another interesting event where we are going to speak about the corporate governance and leading to the economic rewards the digital way. There are so many things that are happening in corporate governance. How can some of the things what is happening in corporate should not be happening? You're going to tell how it can be converted digital way, and Anand Bhushan will be chairing the session. On 11th of November, again we have an excellent event commemorating the World War II. World War II Insights on Management Perspective. Mr. Srinivasan, who is a board member of ITC Limited, is going to be there. And to chair the session, we have Air Marshal Matheshwaran, one of the finest test pilots of Indian Air Force. He'll be chairing this session. Then Wednesday, 13th November, we got an Uncommon Leader, featuring again one of the outstanding NGOs, Sandhyavati Telakavati, founder of First Volunteer. This is a Silver Jubilee event of Uncommon Leader, 13th of November. Then on 21st of November, our flagship event, you must already got the invitation. 21st November is the MMA Amalgamation Business Leadership Award, where Ajim Premji is getting conferred. Please, this is by registration. You have to register because you have a problem of the venue. If you have got the invitation, do register so that we know that how many people you have to manage. We expect a large number of people to attend this event. 28th November, again, an interesting, outstanding event, what we are doing in MMA, or a seminar on role of states, economic development and employment generation. We got outstanding speakers again. Mr. Venkatramani, President of MMA, will be giving the inaugural welcome address. Then Mr. Shanmugam, IAS, Chief Secretary of Government of Tamil Nadu. Mr. Subramaniam, IAS, Chief Secretary of Government of Andhra Pradesh. Then Sheshai, Vice Chairman of Hinduja Group. And Mr. Narayanan, who is former Finance Secretary and Advisor to Prime Minister. They are going to be discussing this roundtable and interesting talk because we want to know what the state government is doing for generation of employment. One thing has happened before the state government thing. Mr. Subramaniam, IAS, is supposed to accepted our thing, and he's a Chief Secretary. This morning I saw the letter, he's been removed as a Chief Secretary from Andhra Pradesh. So on 28th, we'll know who actually the Chief Secretary will be talking, but it's there. So he's not there, but we are requesting him to come. That's what the situation is, state government. But I'm quite sure Mr. Subramaniam will come and speak to us, or this person who is going to step in his shoes will come. 29th, again, we have a talk at Bhupati & Co. Then we have December, only one event I'll talk about December. Water, the fifth pillar, production and development. Again, we have got outstanding speaker Janaki Rajan, Dr. Mohan, and is going to happen on 6th of December. Then 11th of December, again, wonderful event in commemorating, honoring our past president, Mr. R.K. Swamy. We are doing a R.K. Swamy Memorial Lecture. It's the 97th birthday of Mr. R.K. Swamy, and it's happening on the 11th of December. This we are doing jointly with Ad Club because R.K. Swamy belonged to the field of ad, and we got one of the outstanding speaker to come and speak, and the accepted is Mr. Shiv Kumar, who is from Aditya Birla Group. He's going to be speaking there. It's an outstanding event. This we are doing it, initially we thought we'll do dinner, but we got, it's a Karthika Deepam, nobody will have dinner. It suited me, so we're doing only IT on that day. So this is what is happening. Coming to today's event, the subject which is very insightful, thought-provoking, reimagining management education in a dynamic world. We all know the management education, what is happening. I know there are a lot of management educators are here. There are a lot of people who are watching this program live from all over the educational institutions and otherwise. Very warm welcome to each one of you. If you have any queries, please do send it as usual. We'll be more than happy to concern. Ladies and gentlemen, put your hand together to welcome Dr. Suresh Ramanathan, Dean Principal of Great Lakes Institute of Management. And to chair this session, we have Mr. Mahalingam, Member MMA Managing Committee and Partner Director of TSM Group of Companies. May I request you to come out to the stage, sir, please. And Mr. Mali, popularly known as Mali, Mr. Mahalingam, just to briefly to introduce him, is a partner director of TSM Group of Companies. Today is a well-diversified group, interested in financial sector, distribution, service distribution, automobile, and many more. And he's got more than 600 employees at the moment working with TSM Group of Companies. TSM Sons today is one of the largest pre-owned car dealership in South India. Currently sells around 5,000 cars a year. TSM Financial Services started in 1988, was the first and third party distributor of India's concept of introduction to Citibank. TSM Group also entered in the real estate development, doing phenomenal work in the field of real estate, completed over 100 projects in Chennai till date. He also does quality advisory. Then Tejas Auto Spa is doing it, which takes care of automobile and launched in 2012, offers car grooming and services across Chennai and including the major shopping malls like Phoenix and Forum and Ampa Mall, many more. His Credit Cafe is a corporate debt advisory firm of TSM Group, offers funding and forex advisory services for small and mid-sized enterprises through its relationship over 25 banks and many more. And Mr. Mali is also a part of our MMA Managing Committee. He is also chairman of MMA Student Convention Committee. We had organized Digital Transformation Reality the month of September, one of the great convention attended by 1,400 people, where we could bring in some outstanding speakers because Mali was in the forefront to make sure that we get connected with the best of the speakers. Very warm welcome to you, Mr. Mali. Now I request you to please introduce the speaker and the subject over to Mr. Mali. Come.
Good evening, everybody. Should start by saying first I'm delighted to be here and very proud to be here. I'll tell you why I'm very proud a little later. See, introducing a friend normally should be a very simple thing, isn't it? But if you have a friend who's accomplished, illustrious, and more importantly, know for more than 35 years, you have a problem. It's a challenge, I can tell you. Now, why is it a challenge? Because, first of all, you don't know what to say. Because if you've been through hostel with that person and college with that person, you should be careful what not to say. You should make sure you say all the good things about him. And more importantly, you should be careful not to leave out anything, because the conversation will go beyond this evening. So it's a real challenge, and the person posting the challenge for me is our guest of honor, Dr. Suresh Ramanathan, Dean, Great Lakes Institute of Management. But I've decided to keep it simple. First, Suresh the person, and then Suresh the professional. Suresh the person, for all the years that I've known him, one thing defines me. He was high energy, passionate, committed, and murderously focused. Okay? I'm not talking professionally. This I'll relate to my student days for him. See, both of us used to play a lot of table tennis together, and he had another friend of mine called Shukla. They were evenly matched, and they used to win. One used to win one day, the another day, and you won't believe it. Every night between 11 and 1 in the night, Suresh and Shukla were at it trying to beat each other. And this went on for the entire almost 2 years that we were there. And I never used to go near the table those days because there was so much noise and action there. So committed was Suresh. That's the kind of person Suresh is, you know. And that's the commitment and passion that seen Suresh through many things. Now, when he was not playing table tennis, I think academically the only thing he was really passionate about was marketing. The joke was, all of us in IIM Calcutta those days were allowed to pass out with 2 specializations. I passed out with on-record marketing and finance. In Suresh's case, the joke is he passed out with marketing and marketing. So he was so interested in marketing, Suresh. So Suresh, the professional, if you ask me, is, no, I think if you look at his career starting as a student, I think finished school at DAV in Chennai, then went to IIT Delhi, then came to IIM Calcutta, worked in Bombay in his first job, worked in Bangalore, worked in Chennai. So I think he covered all the metros in India when he was in his career. After 10 years of, I think, Indian industry, he thought he should get academic. I was surprised, honestly, because I didn't realize that 10 years later, Suresh would go and do a PhD in marketing. He went to New York at the Stern School. Then I think moved on to teach at the Booth School in Chicago, and then went to Texas A&M. And now Chennai is fortunate to have Suresh here as Dean of Great Lakes Institute of Management. Now, given the topic of the day, reimagining management education in a dynamic world, I don't think we can find a person who's got such experience both in industry and academics and across geographies, not geography, in India and the US. And I think he'll bring not only the perspective of his experiences abroad, but I think he had enough experience in industry here. And Suresh, to be fair, in the last few months that I've been with him, in touch with him here, has, I think, got deep into the Chennai circuit already. So I think he'll be able to give us three views. The view of India before he left, the view of the US and India today. Over to Suresh. Thanks for coming, Suresh.
So thank you, Mali, for that lovely introduction. It's truly an honor, first of all, to be introduced by a person who is someone I have venerated, not just venerated, also competed against. And intense, intense relationship in terms of friendship, just the kind of, bond that we have formed over the last 35 years has been truly special. And therefore, I am truly proud to be here today, talking to all of you, at this forum about something that, he talked about about my passions, about the fact that I'm passionate about things. And this is something that has been a kind of a late discovery for me, this passion in education. I never imagined, as he rightly said, I never imagined that I would actually be getting a PhD, 10 years after working in industry, and having 2 children and restarting life all over again. I like to often say that, you got to disrupt yourself when you see that, there is something that you need to do differently in life. So I've actually had 2 disruptions in life. The first disruption was when I actually gave up a well-paying industry job to go back and restart my life as a PhD student. Right from scratch, as a student, earning a stipend of $18,000 in New York, not knowing what I was getting into. 5 years of a grind, doing that, commuting an hour and a half each way for 5 years. That was my first disruption, and I thought, I'm doing great, Went to Booth, was on the faculty, loved research, everything was fantastic. Then went to Texas A&M, tenured professor, life is cool, everything is great. And now suddenly my second disruption, which is this opportunity to come back to India, the city that I belong to, Chennai, of all places. I wouldn't have imagined that I would actually be coming back to Chennai. And then the opportunity to lead an institution that has clearly become legendary definitely in Chennai, but not just in Chennai, in India, for the accomplishments that it has managed to rack up in just a short span of 15 years. So putting all of that together, what I thought I would talk to you all about was this theme of what does it mean to be in the management education business, so to say, in today's world. And given Mali's, predilections or, his expertise in selling cars, I thought I would begin with an example of a car and to talk about what the MBA is. The MBA, I submit to you, is the ambassador car that you guys are all familiar with. Sturdy, reliable, yet any improvement to it has been mainly tinkering at the margins. Mark 1, Mark 2, Mark 3, Mark 4. You remember that? That is exactly what the MBA has been. For decades, it has been the go-to degree for students who are hoping to earn big money, either as consultants or they want to be in the boardroom. And for the most part, I think we still have a lot of MBAs who are actually doing exactly that. So the question then is, why is it that the business schools in India today, and not just in India, the world over, are basically sounding the alarm on the future of business education? And in my address, I would like to highlight three major issues that are facing the world of business education. And these issues are not new for the most part. These are the result of a classic problem that we as business school professors are teaching our students. We actually talk about it in our classrooms. It's a phenomenon called change blindness. That we are blind to gradual changes in the environment till it is too late to adapt. And it's a pity that many of us in this profession, in this noble profession of teaching and in the business school industry, so to speak, I won't want to use the word industry, but for want of a better word, this admixture of different schools, business schools, why is it that we have not taken these lessons to heart, what we have been teaching our students, and thought about how they might apply to our own universe? So the first major issue that I want to highlight is the relentless press towards commoditization. Lack of innovation and a rush to capitalize on demand has led to a rapid increase, a burgeoning of business schools in this country, most of which have nothing new to offer. In a crowded market, there is very little differentiation. The curriculum at most business schools is very similar, focusing primarily on providing exposure to a broad set of functional areas in the first year and then some specialized electives in the second year. And the result is what we would call strategic herding. What is strategic herding? It's a tendency to benchmark and copy from each other. And as a result, what we are seeing today is a total loss of value in the industry, so to say. As a consequence, we are seeing, in fact, we were talking about it just a little earlier. We are seeing a large number of colleges and universities are shutting down both in India and abroad, or they are migrating to newer business models. Just for example, the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign and the University of Wisconsin at Madison have completely migrated to an online model for their business school, right? So they have basically shut down their brick and mortar operations. So you can see that the forces of change are clearly having an effect on business schools. And this is just going to get exacerbated over time as differentiation keeps going down within this business. The second big issue is, in my opinion, particularly relevant in India. An inordinate focus on short-term returns or outcomes. Like it or not, business schools, especially in India, are placement factories. Students evaluate ROI based on the percentage increase in salary that they earn after graduation relative to what they were earning before and compare it to the fees that they were paying for it. And there's nothing wrong with that, right? I mean, it's clear that, I can understand that mindset very clearly, given that, fees at most business schools run into lakhs of rupees. Students are well justified to actually look at this. However, this focus on the immediate mindset or the immediate outcome ignores a very basic fact. Are our students really prepared for the long game? What happens after they are 5 years out and the nonlinear growth in technology basically renders their skills to become outdated? What happens when they're called to solve more abstract problems within the organization, integrating facts across a whole range of departments and functional areas and dealing with uncertainty? So the question to ask is whether business schools are currently treating you as a data point in their alumni database. What needs to change? So that's my second question. And the third and final big issue, something that I'm really, really passionate about and something that I care about a lot, is the lack of resources and support for knowledge creation. Quite frankly, India is woefully behind the US, China, even Singapore in terms of research. All of them provide huge resources for developing research skills and productivity. There is no ecosystem, no research ecosystem in India for knowledge creation. Whoever is productive in India, in Indian academia, is likely being so based on raw horsepower rather than based on institutional support. Apart from the availability of institutional resources, there's another barrier. And this is something that you in industry should really care about, which is the absence of industry-academia collaboration. Unlike what we might see in the US, where there is a ready exchange of data or of knowledge across the industry-academia boundary, what we are seeing here is that there is a lack of trust that permeates this relationship. Companies are loath to share data that could be used to generate valuable insights for eventual publication in top-tier academic journals. Despite the possibility of non-disclosure agreements and confidentiality agreements preventing the naming of the company or any background information, there is still enormous reluctance on the part of industry to work together with academia. As a result, academicians in India rarely provide usable insights for industry, and industry sees very little utility in collaboration. So let's break down these issues and try to solve for them. I'm going to lay out 4 key prescriptions, which are by no means exhaustive. I talked about the problem of strategic herding, the tendency towards benchmarking and as a consequence, reduced differentiation. Why does this happen? In general, if you talk about not just business schools, but you talk about industry in general, the problem of strategic herding occurs because companies choose to co-locate in the same area of what we call the strategic terrain. Namely, it's a sweet spot where you find a lot of customers willing to pay a good enough price for a reasonable bundle of benefits. In other words, this is a focus on scale. Business schools in India want to attract a large number of students, as many students as possible, offer a whole range of programs, and generate large revenues. Nothing wrong with that either. However, when the market slows down and hiring gets affected, schools are left with a large number of students that still need to be placed. We are seeing these headwinds buffeting the job market, with many companies around the world either deferring their recruitment or cutting back on numbers. And this is not all. Added to this is the pressure that business schools, brick and mortar, traditional business schools are facing from online learning platforms and specialized programs that are basically offering opportunities for young professionals with about 3 to 5 years of experience, the opportunity to upskill themselves in specific areas rather than spend a lot of money on an expensive MBA program. So their agility, coupled with the ability to reach large numbers, poses a significant threat to existing schools that can no longer be ignored. So what this suggests is that scale cannot be the only solution, cannot be the only imperative for business schools. Scope is equally important, perhaps more important today, especially at a time of commoditization. So, my first prescription: business schools need to embrace customization. What do I mean by customization? Now, there are two key stakeholders in this equation: students and corporate partners. So the question I would like to ask business schools: why must we deliver the same content and follow the same pedagogical approach for all students? Take the parallel from advertising and from marketing. Are we talking today about mass media advertising to the same degree as we used to in the past, where you had one advertisement that would be beamed out to millions of people? Everyone is talking about digital marketing. Everyone is talking about, one-to-one targeting. Everyone is talking about customization. Why is it that education cannot follow the same pattern? Why is it that we are following a one-size-fits-all kind of an approach to education in most business schools? Why cannot we harness the power of online learning as a complement to what we are doing in the offline environment to basically understand the learning rates of individual students and their needs, and basically come up with targeted learning programs for students? Why can't we do that? Equally, the plain vanilla curriculum approach that we have at business schools, I'm sure vexes most corporate partners. You just look at the typical curriculum at most business schools and the core courses: Marketing 1, Marketing Management 1, Marketing Management 2, Financial Management 1, Financial Management 2. You get the picture. It's the same courses, the same content. Why is it that business schools cannot partner with corporate partners to deliver specialized certifications and programs that meet the needs of specific industry verticals, and deliver content that is more suited to industry, rather than just prepare students to just equip them with some basic knowledge? Why aren't we doing that? So the point that I'm trying to make, therefore, is that this is the era of customization, and the possibility, particularly through online learning platforms that can complement what is being done in the offline environment, gives us powerful tools to be able to design specialized curriculum, kind of changes that are targeted at students and targeted at specific industries. Now, of course, a big challenge in implementing something like this is the rigid regulations that we see in this country today. Any kind of curriculum change requires a lengthy approval process, by which time you have lost your ability to be agile. You cannot be nimble about the way you implement change if you are going to be stymied by regulations for 2 years, 3 years before you get those approvals. But thankfully, at least there is a ray of hope on the horizon with the new education policy that can hopefully open some doors, at least for some business schools, to innovate. And that will definitely, help, accelerate the rate of change that happens today. So that is my first prescription. A second and related problem is one of input. Take almost any business school in this country and look at the profile of students. Over 70% are likely to be engineers, maybe more. This lack of diversity in the classroom, not in terms of demographics, but in terms of thinking, creates a big problem, because it breeds a kind of sameness in reasoning and thought. Everyone is very similar in the way they approach problems, and as a consequence, what we see is that our students are just not exposed to different types of thought or thinking processes. And this leads to schools, in turn, catering to this style of thinking. Focusing on this lowest common denominator is likely to leave schools vulnerable as businesses shift their recruiting strategies to embrace this need for diversity in thought and deed. So my second prescription is that business schools need to celebrate diversity. However, that's easier said than done. Where do we get these diverse students who can cope with the rigor and the abstract problem solving that is required at business schools? Take most of the public colleges and universities that are churning out undergraduates in the arts and sciences. They are governed by extremely dated curricula and a pedagogy that is ill-suited for the demands of high problem-solving skills. And I'm sure there must be exceptions, but for the most part, this is something that we see, with students who are entering into business school. So luckily, again, there is a ray of hope that is being offered by some private universities, which I hope is not just going to be limited to those private universities, but is going to actually spur large-scale change in the way we actually change and adapt our curricula to the needs of today. So we hope that the private universities that are being launched today will catalyze a very different style of teaching in the feeder schools, in the universities and colleges that are actually feeding students to the business schools. So that is the second issue. I was talking about the focus on short-term outcomes. Now, this is a challenge that is difficult to overcome, and understandably so. With the average MBA in India costing upwards of 15 lakhs rupees, students are justifiably measuring the value that they get there for their money based on placement outcomes. Unfortunately, in my opinion, this breeds a very transactional relationship between the school and the student. A school is only as good as the job that it manages to generate for the student there. That is it, no more than that. However, with rapid changes in the workplace, the knowledge that a student gains or gained a few years ago is likely to become obsolete or even wrong simply within a few years in today's environment. So therefore, a shift in mindset on the part of business schools to focus on the relationship rather than the transaction is absolutely vital. So just imagine, I'm a student of IIM Calcutta. I'm sure, and I know that IIM Calcutta had a news release saying IIM Calcutta alumnus Suresh Ramanathan takes over as Dean of Great Lakes Institute of Management. I saw it. I was so happy. But what if they had sent me a note saying, "Congratulations, Suresh, on your elevation to Dean of Great Lakes. We offer excellent leadership programs that you could take online at a significant discount as an alumnus." Why not? Relationship, lifelong learning. So business schools, that is my third prescription. Business schools need to focus on lifelong learning. And of course, this is not a new idea. Several leading schools around the world are actually trying to create programs aimed at their alumni, so they can upskill or reskill themselves at a fraction of the cost that they would normally pay. But again, I would suggest that partnerships with online learning platforms can definitely help in making this feasible even in India. Finally, the elephant in the room is research. The big problem that we face in Indian academia is research. There's a gaping hole in India's knowledge creation abilities. And why is that? It's a direct result of the neglect of original thinking. I'll tell you this. Sitting in the US for the last 22 years as an academic, I have reviewed thousands of papers that have come to me as a peer reviewer. I have reviewed numerous papers from India as well. Invariably, and I'm sure there are exceptions, invariably the papers that have come to me typically take an existing theory, collect data in India, and then the title of the paper is XXX Theory, the Indian Scenario. As though there is something different about the Indian scenario. Tell me, why is it different? Tell me what is new that you are adding to the knowledge that is being created. Unfortunately, that is not there. So, because of that, original thinking is really not easy to develop. It requires intense training, a lot of workshops, a lot of exposure to people who are actually pursuing cutting-edge research. And that is simply not there in this country right now. We don't have an ecosystem for that. So what we really need is something called a train the trainer program, where the best talent from around the world can help train faculty who can then help train PhD students. And such a program would bring academicians around the world into contact with our Indian faculty, and industry can partner on this platform, right? We create a platform, we bring all of them together, and then we can overcome the need for heavy investments that any individual school needs to make, because this is going to be a platform-based approach. Everybody collaborates and comes up with ideas. And so my final prescription is business schools need to use a platform approach to research in India. And this addresses two major challenges that we face in India. Number one, business school faculty in India are often at a loss to know who they can even collaborate with. I don't even know, if many faculty would not even know who are the faculty in a particular area with who are the experts in a particular domain. So if you don't have a network, it is impossible to publish. So a platform like this would definitely help. And second, industry would benefit because you would get exposed to, or you would get, you would get access to the finest minds in the academic world around the world who can help solve your problems. And that would really be a win-win situation for everybody. And this is really why I would love to work with MMA, if possible, to create a research platform where industry, academia, all of us can collaborate and create an ecosystem that would actually facilitate this for everybody. I think this is going to be the game changer in a market like this. Okay. So, in closing, back to the car analogy, and I'm going to use a really, really bad pun here, okay? So, the trusted ambassador is a relic of the past. It has served its purpose admirably. It is time to herald a new standard in business education. Thank you. Yeah. Yes. Yes. So I think the idea of online platforms, yes, it is not new. But I think if you look at the basis, the basic model in terms of the business model of online, it started off appealing to a very small segment of the population, right? It was meant to make education available to a very, to a larger group of people who could not afford standard education, and in a way, democratization, if you will, right, of education. It was probably not of the same quality as what you would find at a regular business school, and so therefore, much like any disruptive innovation, it starts by appealing to a very small market, and it is probably inferior to what is already out there, right? But as disruptive innovations go along, and this is typically what happens, and this has happened even in we talk about Coursera's and the edX of the world and all the MOOCs that have come up. When Coursera and the MOOCs came up, the initial reaction of business schools was to say, this is not competition. We cannot, they cannot replicate what we provide in the classroom. But fast forward, you can see that technology is going to improve, and it is going to make AI and artificial reality, artificial intelligence, and virtual reality, and all of that. Technology will enable the peer-to-peer interaction can actually be enabled even using technology. You don't need physical presence. You can actually create that even through technology, right? So we can see that as technology improves, we will see that online learning will continue to grab greater share out of traditional models. And as a consequence, if business schools are not going to adapt themselves to these changes, they are eventually going to find themselves completely disadvantaged. I hope that answers your question. Yes?
Can I ask?
Yeah.
Good evening, sir. My name is Varadarajan. I'm a trainer and a coach. I engage with a lot of students and a lot of B school students. And I have two parts of the question. One is related to the point that you said that students don't know what their goals are before they choose their education. But I have known of some colleges who identify or give admission to students who have a goal in mind before they even sign the application forms. I don't want to name the institution. Actually, it is known for everyone. And fortunately, my daughter also did it from there. So there are some institutions who actually get the goal from the student before they even give the application forms. The second part is you said about the changes in the education. I don't know how many of us know that in Singapore, the education, the humanities is also part of most of the educations nowadays.
Right.
Now, they would have implemented this humanities few years ago, and we even don't know what humanities, and that's a major part in the business environment. So, can you throw some light on the institutions or the Indian scenario and how humanities is looked at? And how is the scope in the B schools today? Thank you.
Thank you for that question. So I think I'll answer the second question first. And this is the challenge of how we can encourage more holistic thinking in our students. I think this is a very, very important point. And I think back about my days at IIT, when we were all relentlessly focused on graduating as quickly as possible with an engineering degree, and there were one or two humanities courses, sociology or psychology, that were thrown in the department, and we would go there. Oftentimes it was like one of those time pass courses, right? No one really took it seriously, and to my mind, I think that is a shame, because what it promotes is a very linear kind of a thinking process, that you're not able to integrate uncertainty, you're not able to integrate ambiguity in the way you think. And I fast forward to my times in the US, and my daughter, when she went to high school, at her school, even some very basic courses in high school, okay, they were actually making her read papers, not just books, right? They were making her read academic papers on history and other topics, making her integrate facts across different papers and synthesize something that would actually then be presented as a comprehensive idea, right? That idea, that ability to synthesize, that ability to integrate facts is woefully missing in Indian education today. We just don't have it. Even when I talk, when we look at the average business school student, their ability to integrate facts is actually rather weak. So I strongly agree with you. I think we need more exposure to humanities education early on as part of a comprehensive curriculum, rather than just focus on a discipline-based functional type of an approach. We just need broader exposure. To the second point or the first point that you made about, the goals that, schools, yeah, I mean, I'm sure there are schools that do it and there are schools that don't do it. I think, there is a lot of, there are differences in the way schools are approaching this. Like I said, I think there are schools that are focused very strongly on placement outcomes because that seems to be the only driver of value right now. And I'm hoping that value can be defined in broader terms, in richer terms, right? Because value cannot simply be based on salary. Value should be based on what you got while you were at the institution that prepares you for the challenges 3 years, right? So the mindset that a student should have shouldn't be what am I getting out with today? Today is the last day and what is my salary that I'm getting? But today is the first day of the rest of my life, right? And only when they graduate with that mindset will they actually have, the sense that, we need to think about what else we are getting, right? But it's difficult. I agree with you. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, so my name is Venkat. I am a retired professor of management. I have two questions.
Sure.
You have shared a few prescriptions on improving management education. Can you briefly throw some light on how these prescriptions have been adapted in various universities in US and so on? I mean, where do we stand in terms of implementation?
Sure.
The second question, I think, is a very important thing which most of us forget, is that none of the schools or none of the education institutions focus on two things: ethics, which is badly lacking and which is very much important for a manager, and secondly, how to manage oneself, because a manager goes through a lot of ups and downs in life. So I think possibly that should also be one area to be looked at. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for that question, both questions. So as in regard to that first question, in terms of, which of my prescriptions, and by no means are my prescriptions exhaustive. As I said, there are many other things that schools are doing and not doing. I just, these are ruminations that happened at 11 p.m. last night, so bear with me for that. But there are some things that are definitely being done, and I have been looking at, articles that say the future of MBA education. HBR has got an article that talks about it, and several others are talking about. Yale has been experimenting with some interesting ideas of partnering with multiple business schools across the world to establish a consortium where students work on global projects, right? So you have teams of students from different schools that are actually working across countries on global projects, so that they get exposure to a broad set of problems, not just limited to one country. So that is something that is happening. What I talked about, the focus on lifelong learning, I think some of the schools, Stanford and others, are actually adopting it, and to varying degrees of success, but at least it is being talked about. This focus on customization, I think, is something that is still not being done to a great degree, and I think it is something that is definitely going to be facilitated by the availability of technology. So we can definitely implement that. So in bits and pieces, some of these things are happening, not all of them, but some of them are happening. The second question that you asked was about other skills, ethics and softer skills, and preparing for life. And I totally agree with you. These are things, once again, you remember, all of this boils down to a mindset of saying, as long as my student graduates from this institution, I'm happy. Right. Ethics is part of the curriculum at several schools. We have a course, many schools have business ethics as one of the courses. But does it actually get translated into people embracing the idea of business ethics? Question mark on that. As far as softer skills, the lesser spoken, the better, because I don't think there is enough that is being done once again on that. And I wish, for example, that schools would have the system of maybe have executive coaching or something like that for students. Help build their skills and help build their confidence in things, and maybe guide them to become better managers and better people in general, right? I mean, these are things that could potentially be done, but I think, we are still scratching the surface. I think we are still solving basic problems, and quite often these things are probably being left as nice to do.
So my question is, why our MBA students, they don't take up entrepreneurship? Most of our MBA students, they are just going for a job only, working under some pupils. But why don't they go individually? Why don't they take up some entrepreneurship? And I would like to know, is there any direction in the MBA education for taking up entrepreneurship? I expected something in this contest in your Reimagining Management Education, but I don't find that one. Can you explain to me, sir?
Sure. Okay, here's my opportunity to do a little plug for what Great Lakes is doing. So Great Lakes actually is just starting under the aegis of the Atal Innovation Mission. We have the Atal Great Lakes Balachandran Initiative, which is an incubator for startups. With government help, and we have mentors from the Chennai community and others who are coming on board to actually help incubate new ideas, not just from students, but from alumni and others. They can come and work on ideas in our incubator and take it up. So we are creating it. Now, as to your broader question, why are MBA students not doing it? I think there is a general risk aversion on the part of a lot of students. We, again, don't have, even in the US, if you look at it, Stanford is a school that is well known for entrepreneurship. But if you go to a University of Chicago or you go to a Kellogg, you will not find so many entrepreneurs, right? Every school has got its signature. First of all, you need to be close to an environment that facilitates entrepreneurship. In the case of Stanford, you are in Silicon Valley, and therefore, it is easier to come up with ideas and find some traction for it. But if you're far away from it, it is a little more difficult. And to Mali, Mali's just telling me, the financial burden that students have in terms of the loans that they have to take. Obviously, that is another big barrier that they face, right? You have to pay off the loans to be able to start anything. And so I think these are some of the barriers that people face, but I don't think this is insurmountable. I think we will definitely see a greater focus on entrepreneurship, particularly as I think once the environment and the, everybody is now getting enamored with startups, everybody's talking startups, I want to, have this new idea and I want to start something. So we're going to see a lot of that happening. There was a time when it was not there at all, right? I mean, there was no kind of a system for, facilitating startups. Luckily, we now have people, mentors, we have, angel investors and so on, who are willing to support good ideas. So we will definitely see this changing, and we will see MBAs definitely getting into this in a much bigger way.
Dr. Suresh Ramanan, sir, your talk was very deep dive one and a very provoking, thought-provoking one. I have only two observations and one leading relationship partnership. One is that These type of initiatives on the technical area through NTRO with the Prime Minister's office, we called it as R&D, academia, and the industry. We have done it, we have been successful, and we are on the job. Many things we can't disclose it outside, as you know well.
Right.
As and when we progress, that's been done under the leadership of Dr. Arunachalam. Since you said Dr. Kasturi Rangan, I was part of the system there, and I worked with him in the committees in the Indian Institute of Science and many other areas. Since you are willing to express your partnership with MBA, and for the MBA, with only MBBA, and MMA and MBA, we can arrange that lovely partnership for R&D, because research, as you know well, we never pay any money. None of the corporates pay any money. They are not willing to do anything. Even in Karnataka, we have sanctioned 2,500 crores for the IT industries. Many people don't know. When they make money, they know.
Yeah.
We are ready to do that. Get the funding, get the arrangement, but through MMA.
Yes, sir.
That's through MMA. Let this be a pioneer from Chennai,
Yes, sir.
taking the leadership. If you are willing to come with a consortium, we are ready with our all other wherewithals, but first research,
Yes, sir.
development, then academia, and assurance of our people in the industry. Yeah, liaison, whatever you said, we can be fitted well into that.
Thank you.
If you are ready, we are ready. And I think I vouch for Captain Vijay Kumar's excellent initiative. Today morning I came from Kabul, a lovely place. Many of you dear not willing to come, but many of us do go there. We'll share a lot of thoughts in the offline. But this initiative, I want to tell it because let this be a forum where this first thought that when you gave it thought, we want to not miss it.
Thank you, sir.
Let's take it forward. Thank you very much for that.
Good evening, sir. I'm Badri Narayanan. I'm studying MBA from Anna University. So actually I had two questions. So first question you have already answered, like the expectation of student, what should be the expectation of the student after graduation? The second one is, what do you think about open book exam method?
I hate exams. I hate exams.
Will that be a solution? Will that be a solution to the thing that you said, like strategic herding?
So I'll tell you my thinking, right? I think exams basically test memory. Exams do not, even if it's an open book, you're basically, half the time students are basically just looking for the material in the book. Last minute, you're flipping pages to see where is that stuff, right? And then people have written notes on the side, on the margin, and that's really what you're producing. Instead, I would rather have my students actually focus on analyzing cases or doing deep thinking kind of, problem solving, as part of their evaluation. So, in the exams that I set, or in the last 22 years that I've been teaching, I have not had a single exam. Not one. So, I hope we can do that.
Good evening, sir. It was a wonderful listening to you, the kind of prescriptions you gave for some of the problems that we face. I'm also a B school product. And one thing that I've hated all through my B schooling and post that in the last 10 years is the idea that B schools are placement agencies, like you mentioned. Can we look at an era where some B school could stand and say that we are not going to be placement agency, we are going to give you some placement assistance. We're just going to expose you to the corporate, but we are not, because I believe only engineering and business schools are in this business of placement. And I don't think there is any other educational field where, whether it be MBBS or LLB or any other arts or humanities, where they provide placement assistance like B schools or engineering colleges do.
Yeah.
So can we look at an era where there could be an alternate system where at B schools we focus on education, on grooming an individual?
So is it conceivable? Yes. Is it feasible? I don't know at this stage, because it is a mindset change. And I don't want to take away the focus. I mean, even if you look at most ranking metrics, world over, people are looking at, your success rates in terms of placement. And, again, it's very understandable given the high cost of management education everywhere that you have to look at it in terms of ROI, right? So I don't think we can get away from this. Instead, so I like to look at value as a numerator divided by denominator kind of a thing, right? So the denominator is the price that you pay. But that value currently is unidimensional. The numerator is unidimensional. What is the salary I get, right? There is no other definition of value in the way we are quantifying it. So if I could enrich that description of value to incorporate a whole lot of other things, the network that you're able to build, the relationship that I can create between the school and, so there are a variety of different things that we can potentially add to this definition of value so that it no longer gets seen as only a placement factory, but it is placement plus.
Because I don't think in many other countries placement is a factor at all when we talk about business schools.
Oh, well, it actually is, right?
But not
while a lot of schools pretend that it is not, it is definitely an important part, right? Everybody's concerned, you have career services that will be scrambling to make sure that their students are placed. So that happens everywhere. I think there is an inordinate focus on it in India. To the point where people are coming in and they don't focus on what they're learning, but instead they just focused on what they graduate with. And so but the onus is on the business school to be able to actually enrich what they are giving in the classroom. The kind of skills that I'm giving you. If I teach a course which a student already knows or has, feels that it is not important, then, what is the value I'm adding, right? So we need to take a look at the curriculum a lot more closely to see what we can add.
My cynicism towards this placement agency kind of a thing is because students are so engrossed in the placement
Absolutely.
thing alone, they are not focusing on their courses, they're
I
not
agree.
focusing on the skills, on relationships and other things.
I agree. And that gets to the point of the softer skills and everything, right? I mean, we are not building any of that.
Right.
But your point is well taken. It's a vexatious problem.
Yes. Thank you.
Good evening. So I would like you to request you to just give a brief on how this affiliation system of these MBAs are, killing a lot of institutes today. Because we see 80% of the people who are unemployed are because of these affiliation problems. Because the the institutes don't get the affiliations, and eventually the students also don't get a degree which is recognized.
Mm-hmm.
So I would like to know your view with respect to that, because you just mentioned the corporate and the institute partnership.
Mm-hmm.
So first is that. Second is industry veterans are not allowed to teach in the institutes because of some mandate that every faculty needs to have a PhD degree. But to my knowledge, when the IIM or the IITs were started, the directors were not, the PhDs. So what is your view on that? Because if this kind of a setup is removed, I feel, stalwarts like you will help us a lot in, understanding what the practicalities are. And third thing is when you mentioned about, working for the corporate, for specific things, when you see, the demand from the corporate comes only for a limited period. Today we see it's AL, big data, machine learning. So these institutes offer only certificate programs. Why not, when you sit and, elaborate on the portions with them, why is it not for a year? Why is it only, curtailed for 3 months? And do you also see finally any kind of an M&A activity happening in the education sector? Mergers and acquisitions.
4 questions. Okay. I'll have to remember them first. Question number 1 was related to affiliations. To be honest, I don't have an answer to that. It is, again, a problem, I think, largely because of the fact that, there are too many schools. There has been an explosion in the number of schools, and therefore control in quality has been largely determined by the regulatory system in the country. And because of that, I think programs get recognition from AICTE and other bodies, which there is a standard set of guidelines and principles that they have, and I don't want to get into the details of that in terms of talking about the process itself, but I think with the new education policy, there will be a little more leeway that gets opened up for affiliations or for schools that don't have those affiliations but still have certifications from accreditation bodies and so on. You might see a little more change happening in that area. I'm just optimistic, cautiously optimistic, because there is many a slip between the cup and the lip, as they say. So we'll wait and watch on that. Your second question was related to, help me. PhDs, yes. Sorry? Industry veterans, yes. So industry veterans, see, we do have people from industry coming in and teaching even at Great Lakes, and at most other schools we have that happening, even without PhDs. No. Actually, full courses. So we have a system of adjunct professors or visiting professors. So they come and they take a complete course. Typically, it is for electives rather than for core courses. Core courses continue to be taught by full-time faculty, but we have electives. For example, at Great Lakes, we have some electives on machine learning that are taught by people from industry, right? So I see, in fact, a greater opportunity for industry veterans to give back to institutions and collaborate and come and teach full-time, full courses. That is definitely going to have, because we need that kind of, ideas coming back, flowing back to academia from industry. So we will continue to encourage those kinds of partnerships. Right? So I don't think that is going to diminish anytime soon. Okay. Again, I'm not aware. Mali says it's not true anymore. So yeah. So adjunct is, so typically there is an accredited, having gone through this process, right? There are international accreditation bodies. There's one called the AACSB, which is actually responsible for certifying your entire program. And they classify professors or faculty into 4 categories, okay? Scholarly academics, practicing academics who are more like consultants, and then scholarly practitioners, and no, not practicing, it is participating academics or something like that. I don't have the exact acronym, but so there are 4 categories, some of whom are PhDs. So the academics are PhDs, the non-academics, the practitioners are non-PhDs.
Few words, Vijay. Thanks, Suresh. That was wonderfully refreshing. You got me nostalgic by mentioning ambassadors, heralds, and standards. Those are the first cars I sold when I got into business. So, but you brought me back quickly to reality. I just want to say a couple of things. I think you demolished 3 or 4 stereotypes of an academic for me. First of all, you were self-critical of the system and management education. Most academics, at least in India, and especially management academics, are very defensive, and they tend to stand on a high pedestal and say nothing is wrong with us. That's typical of an academic in India, at least. I don't know how it is in the US. Second is the solutions you gave were very practical, and you were honest enough to accept if there were no solution, which is again very rare with academics. With most people, specifically academic books, academics think they know all. And finally, you spoke in a language all of us understood, because being IIM and US, I thought there'd be a lot of jargon. There was no. Thank you, I understood your speech. And overall, very refreshing, honest, and candid. Really, I think your exam suggestion will get a lot more students to Great Lakes for you. And I'm sure if there was an election now, you'll win 100 out of 100 votes today. Thanks. Thanks, sir.
Thank you, Mali. I think it's a fascinating evening because many of us want to kindle thought process In fact, the interest, I invited every single institution in Chennai to come and attend this event, member, not member, every faculty, every owners of the institution. But I know how many of them attend, because that shows the interest, because if some of the institutions, I hope people are watching, and I also circulate this tomorrow to all the thing through YouTube connectivity, because people have to learn this, then only we'll know, because he said about lifelong learning. I know we had a presentation by Singapore National University, they have a lifelong learning. You can discontinue the course and come and join back after 18 years, same course or different courses. There's so many things are there. So it's a lovely evening, and I think it's been a real thought-provoking and for us. I still remember in armed forces when a rule of war was taught to us, they used to tell us three things. When a general who knows his weaknesses, his strength, and others' weaknesses, enemies, he'll be always win most of the war. When general he doesn't know his weakness, he knows the weakness of the enemy, he wins some, when lose. But a general who doesn't know his weaknesses as well as the enemy's weaknesses always will be a disaster. Our MBA education is to some extent, it came to my mind, this is what disaster for us, because the way forward is we don't know what exactly we are doing. Sir, it's indeed a pleasure to have you with us this evening, and I take your offer. MMA is at your disposal. I think I already told in the date sometime in Jan-Feb we'll do for Atal Startup one-day conclave. Thereafter, we'll have a series of coaching and mentoring for startups, because more than happy to do that. And MMA, we've got all the wherewithal and resources to do that. And thank you so much for choosing MMA to do that. Ladies and gentlemen, big round of applause to our professor for sharing your time. And I request Mali to present a memento on behalf of MMA. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Good night till we meet again tomorrow evening again. I'll keep telling you, keep coming next 4 days.